You're ready to
half
commence.
screen it or something? Oh, here we go.
Over there.
Everyone's on. It's okay. Our audios must be off.
You can commence the meeting.
Thank you, Heidi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's David Crofts and I'm the chair of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. Just before I start, if you're not talking at any particular point of time, can you turn your microphone off, please? It just helps avoid background noises and echoes and the like. So before we commence dealing with the items before us today, there's a number of procedural matters that we need to work our way through. The first one relates to an acknowledgement of country. As a sign of respect, the Northern Beaches Planning Panel acknowledges the traditional custodians of these lands upon which we gather and pays respect to elders past, present and emerging. Apologies for this meeting. I have received no apologies and I haven't received any declarations of interest that preclude any of the panel members participating in the meeting. Just verify that's the case, Heidi?
That is correct. No declarations of conflict.
Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting are contained in the agenda for this meeting that's been distributed and available on Council's website as well. That's the meeting of the 21st of February. Just a recommendation that the panel note that the minutes of that meeting were adopted by the chairperson and have been posted on Council's website. I'll take it that the panel has noted that. And given there's probably a few people attending this meeting that haven't been at a planning panel meeting before, is that the case? Or have you all been to planning panel meetings before?
I've been there.
So I don't need to go through an introduction of the function of the panels and so on? No?
I think it's a first for a few of us, actually.
It is the first. Okay, not a problem at all. Okay. So the background to it is that back in 2018, local planning panels were made mandatory for all Sydney councils as well as Wollongong Council and the Central Coast. The aim of the panels is to provide increased level of accountability and ensure independent oversight leads to better planning outcomes when assessing applications and certain planning proposals. What happens is that it provides an independent and open forum for interested people and groups to hear and make submissions about development proposals. And the panel considers and determines certain development applications, modifications to applications, and also reviews of applications that are referred to it. It also can make recommendations to council on planning proposals and any other development matter that may be referred to the panel. There are certain statutory rules that govern our operation through a code of conduct and operational procedures, and they are on the Department of Planning, which I think is Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure now this week, and it's available on their website. The process that's used is that applications are lodged as per normal practice. Council officers still assess development applications as per normal practice, and then they make a report to the planning panel, and that report is contained in the papers that have been made publicly available. Then the panel does an independent determination of the application following any site inspections that they've been able to do of the sites, as well as hearing what's happened within the public session, which we're about to go through, and their consideration of any presentations that may be made. The panel also has access to background information that's been lodged by the applicant to support the application, as well as copies of all the submissions that have been made by the public. The panels themselves consist of 4 members. a chairperson, that's myself, a community member, in this case it's Phil Young, and 2 independent experts, who in this case are Marjorie Ferguson and Lisa Bella Esposito. The community member, in this case Phil, is a representative of the local community, but is not necessarily an expert in a particular field. I think I've gone through the meeting format for you. There's a couple of other things I should mention. That this session we're about to go through is an opportunity to make oral submissions to the panel. It's not a place for debate between yourself and the panel members or between any objectors and the applicant. It's purely to inform the panel as to your views on a particular matter. The panel members may ask questions of you following your presentation, and the format I like to follow in these meetings is I ask for all the presentations from any objectors and from the applicants to occur, and then we open for questions from the panel. The reason for that is it's more efficient because sometimes questions are answered through that process and don't need to be asked again. The meeting itself is video and audio recorded, and also the recordings are live streamed on Council's website, so you can also see it later. That's why it's recorded, because it's posted. Once all the speakers have presented on all the public items, I'll close the public meeting, and then we'll move into a closed session where we determine the application, and that determination will be made available for Council usually the week following our meeting. I think that's about all I need to run through in terms of procedural matters today. So I'd now like to move on to the public meeting if I can. We have item 4.1 before us at the moment, which is on page 5 of the PDF for those who are flicking through it. It's DA 2023/0617, 22 and 24 Angle Street, Balgowlah, and it relates to demolition works and the proposed construction of a residential flat building. I have a number of speakers that have registered. Adam Wheat, who I can see you're present, Adam. Tristan Moore, I don't know if Tristan's online.
I'm present. Thanks, David.
Sorry?
I'm here. Thank you, David.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. Also, Luke Richmond. Doesn't sound like Luke's with us yet. And also, I have the, on behalf of the applicant, Greg Boston from Boston Blythe Fleming Consultants, and also there's some representatives of the applicant themselves who are also there, who are available to answer questions if needed. But I understand, Greg, you'll be doing the presentation. Is that correct? Right. Okay. Thank you. In terms of any presentations, please be aware that we've read all the submissions, and we've also read the council officer's assessment of those submissions. So there's no need to repeat them verbatim. My advice to you is to really focus on the points you think are most important. And if you could limit your presentation to 3 minutes, that would be wonderful. So I'd now like to move on to Adam Wheat. Adam, we're in your hands now. If you'd like to make your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, David. And yeah, look, thanks for putting me up front. I do need to run to another meeting, so I will absolutely keep it short and sweet for you. But I did want to take the opportunity, given that we are 72 West, which is the property that runs across the, has the largest border with the proposed development, and the proposed 3-story structure is basically on our border, just a series of windows and balconies running the full length of the property. The excessive scale has, non-compliant height and significant non-compliant rear setback to our property. And I mean, it results in effectively 6 properties looming over our single-story dwelling, looking directly into our kitchen area, directly into our dining, into our backyard, with seemingly little consideration for any impact on our privacy. We've got, a young family with 2 young primary school aged children, has a huge impact on our ability to enjoy our property, but also, we already have an approved CDC with council, which has a minor extension to the back for an indoor-outdoor entertaining area, which will be significantly impacted by this development. We have no real objection to reasonable development, but these proposals just significantly outside of the controls that are in place that are there to protect these surrounding neighbours. It's a massive overreach. It's a huge amount of burden on us. I mean, we've had to go through, get legal advice for the easement proposal that was put to us. We've had to go and have multiple town planning meetings and submissions come through, and there's a lot of energy expended here that I don't see why, it just seems like a gross exploitation of controls at the attempt of an individual's gain over the expense of the neighbours, in my view. And I'm sure, the others can touch on some specific impacts to the other neighbours, but yeah, from our perspective, I think that's important to get across, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. Could I now ask Tristan Moore? Tristan, are you online now?
I am.
Yes.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you. We can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to address the panel in respect to the development application. I'm the owner of Unit 1, 72B West Street, which is situated directly west of the proposed development and shares a common boundary. I object to this proposal based on the following key concerns: non-compliance with planning controls and objectives, excessive bulk and scale, and loss of privacy and amenity. Firstly, this proposal fails to comply with multiple controls in both the Manly LEP and DCP. Notably, the proposed floor space ratio of 0.81 to 1 represents a 63% variance and exceedance of Council's control. Despite clear feedback from Council's Design and Sustainability Advisory Panel, this proposal remains an example of gross exceedance by the developer of multiple planning controls, well beyond what could be considered reasonable. On this basis, the panel should reject this proposal. Turning to my second key concern, the proposed development outcome is excessive in its bulk and scale as a consequence of the significant non-compliance with principal development standards, namely floor space ratio and height of buildings. The proposal demonstrates a lack of regard for existing planning controls and objectives, presenting an overbearing, unbroken mass that is entirely out of character with the prevailing and desired streetscape. On this basis, the panel should reject this proposal. Finally, the proposed development will have an adverse impact on the privacy of existing residents and their right to peaceful enjoyment. This impact is due to the combination of non-compliant setbacks at front, side and rear boundaries, non-compliant building separation from the existing dwellings, and non-compliant residential density. As it relates to my property, the following building features encroach on the required 3-metre side boundary setback: the ground floor and first floor terraces on the northwestern elevation, the articulated elements on the western elevation, and the portion of the basement car park above ground. Notably, these building features conflict with the Council's assessment report, which states that the side setbacks are compliant with the Manly DCP. It should also be noted that both the ground floor and first floor terraces on the northwestern elevation are located less than 5 metres from the master bedrooms of Units 1 and 2 of 72B West Street. The proximity of the northwestern terraces in the proposed development and the lack of full-length fixed privacy screening is expected to have an adverse impact on the visual and acoustic privacy of both new and existing residents and their right to peaceful enjoyment. On this basis, the panel should reject this proposal. Taking into consideration the gross non-compliance with planning controls, the excessive bulk and scale, and the expected loss of privacy and amenity, I urge the panel to reject development application DA 2023/0617. Based on the points outlined, this proposal is not in the public interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tristan. Luke Richmond, I can see you're online, and if you could
Yes.
make your presentation, please, that would be great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem. Thank you. So my name's Luke Richmond, and I'm from Unit 12 of 20 Angle Street, so obviously right adjacent to 22 Angle Street. I'm actually representing a number of the residents from our lot, the chair of our strata committee, and they've actually asked me to kind of present on their behalf as well. I note that a number of our residents have also put forward submissions objecting to the DA's submission. So I'm just going to read out, I guess, what some of the overarching kind of major issues and concerns kind of are. They've already been touched on and covered, but just to reiterate them, I think firstly, the bulk and the scale of the design is inappropriate and doesn't meet the objectives of planning controls with relation to height and floor space and setbacks. And I think from the northern elevation, the profile is significantly bulkier and the elevation is higher than at us at 20 Angle Street. And so for us, I guess, when you think about the overlook into adjacent properties, it just hasn't been resolved. For us at 20 Angle Street, specifically the balcony of the unit 103 in the proposed development, it overlooks our primary common area as well as the bedroom for 3 different units. That's going to cause really significant privacy issues. I guess the insufficient setbacks and direct sight lines from the living areas in the new development will significantly impact our privacy and the right to enjoy our property, as well as any of the new tenants of the proposed development. And kind of reiterating what Adam's kind of said, we've got like with our units, we've all got a lot of young children. There's 5 or 6 of us with kids under the age of 2 or 3. It's an area we use very frequently and very often, and we're just incredibly concerned about the privacy issues this is going to present, particularly for the 3 units where it'll be directly looking into, which is units 1, 3, and 5. And then I think the other major issue is actually about the vehicle access. At the moment, the vehicle access as it stands to 22 Angle Street, it feels quite inappropriate, to be completely honest, for a shared pedestrian path area. So if you're going to add an additional 6 units to that space, it really feels like it's non-compliant, particularly with planning control 4.1.6.4. I guess this design hasn't really addressed the fact that pedestrians frequently use this area before and after school. It's like a peak period where school students are going, particularly up to Balgala Boys High or to St. Cecilia's, but also walking down to Manly West and a number of the local public schools as well. There's just already significant safety issues in terms of visibility. If you're looking at new cars kind of reversing out and how they're going to use this kind of shared pedestrian space, we're really concerned about the significant safety risks this is going to cause, particularly over time. It's easy to kind of, overlook it like a single incident and whether it might occur, but over time, the risk is just going to increase with the number of vehicles. I think at the moment, the main thing that's been looked at the traffic report appears to be the queuing, which is quite low, but it actually doesn't really fully look at the safety impacts this is going to cause on pedestrians. So that'd be like another major concern we have as well. And in addition, obviously, everything else that's been put forward in our submissions, that I know you've already said, David, that you've already read. So yeah, overall, we kind of feel the DA fails to cover the non-compliant areas that are in it, but also fails to show that the development controls are unreasonable. So we obviously think they're there for a reason, and it fails to meet a number of those, as we've kind of already put in writing and outlined. So that's it for me. So thank you, David, and thanks to the panel for letting us present and sharing our concerns and hoping that this doesn't go ahead.
Thank you very much, Luke.
Thank you.
That is all the presentations we have from the objectors. On behalf of the applicant, Greg Boston is present. Greg, do you have any comments that you'd like to make or a presentation, please?
Yeah, look, I would, and thank you for the opportunity. Look, the application was lodged last May, and there has been a continual negotiation with council in relation to responding to not only the DSAP minutes, but concerns that were raised through council's assessment process. Now, we know as a matter of fact that the assessing officer had in fact recommended approval of the application and forwarded a report up to senior management for concurrence. It's not unusual for senior management not to agree with staff, so we accept that the recommendation before you today isn't supportive. But similarly, it's not unusual or inappropriate for this particular panel, as an independent panel, to also form an alternate view to the recommendation before you. And what we're seeking today is that particular circumstance. The report, when you read through it, it's actually got a lot of positive feedback in relation to the scheme, and I think that reflects the fact that there have been quite substantive amendments made through the design process. The concerns raised in relation to height as a reason for refusal, the panel will note from the architectural plans and the clause 4.6 that is a very small portion of the development in the northeastern corner, associated with a local depression rather than a desire to push the boundaries in terms of height. You'll note from the street elevation, which is on page, I think, 70 of the agenda, that as the building presents to the street, and certainly as it relates to the two immediately adjoining properties, it sits well below the height control and well below the height established by the adjoining properties in a streetscape context. And we say that it's open to the panel to form a view that the 4.6 variation request is in fact well founded. In relation to the FSR concern, the panel will be aware, or if you're not aware, certainly reading the clause 4.6 variation request, that it's now accepted by the court, and it's been recently accepted by way of 34 agreement on a number of flat buildings in Fairlight Street, that where you pick up a couple of sites and you have the ability to consolidate, that it's not an unreasonable proposition to take advantage of the space between what would otherwise be two compliant building forms on the individual sites in relation to additional floor space. Now, we've provided diagrams to council to demonstrate that the FSR exceedance is limited to the area of floor space which is centralised within the development. That is, that in terms of the side boundary setbacks, we're compliant with the DCP provisions. The rear setback of 6 metres to the balcony edges and 8 metres to the facade alignment, we believe is appropriate given the R1 general residential zoning of the land, which anticipates a range of dwelling densities from residential flat buildings to dwelling houses. And to that extent, we believe that the additional floor space doesn't in any way contribute to a building which, from a streetscape perspective, and I've just taken you to the diagram on page 70, one that will be perceived as inappropriate or jarring, or one that gives rise to unacceptable residential amenity impact. So again, we say that the 4.6 variation request as it relates to FSR is well founded. There's some residual concerns in the report in relation to dwelling density, but the report does quite helpfully provide a comparison in relation to the dwelling densities on surrounding properties and properties generally in that area. And we say that the number of dwellings proposed on this site is not unacceptable, and to that extent a variation would be warranted. Concerns raised in relation to visual privacy to the properties at the rear and also to the adjoining properties. We say that just looking at the balcony treatments of the upper level apartments, particularly as they present to the rear, that it'd be open for the panel to impose a condition for additional planter boxes in appropriate locations. And that was something that was suggested in the assessment report and certainly something that would be embraced by us. So again, we would raise no objection to a reasonable condition in that regard. Concern in relation to the width of the building to the street and a lack of articulation. We believe that the front facade is in fact well articulated, that the fact that entry foyer and circulation core is central to the building. You'll see from the elevations that the building does present appropriately in a streetscape context, and also noting that it's quite an unusual streetscape whereby it's an angle street address. However, the property does actually front Sydney Road and that large sort of public open space area on the unmade portion of road reserve. And I think that assists as well in terms of just ameliorating any adverse streetscape impacts. And I think the last issue was in relation to solar access, and we say that based on the solar gain diagrams or view from the sun diagrams submitted, that we are in fact maintaining compliant levels of solar access to surrounding properties. So we're here today to ask that the panel do actually consider this on its merits, notwithstanding the recommendation before you. A lot of work has been put into the design before you today, which we believe does in fact address the DSAP comments appropriately and introduces a building of exceptional design quality into a streetscape where it won't give rise to adverse impacts. So we've got the architect, the client and myself here today to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. And that's the end of the presentation component for this item. I'd now like to go over to panel members to see whether or not you have any questions you wish to ask any of the submittees or the applicant and or their representatives. Any questions at all? No. No, I don't think we have. Can I just, given there's no questions, I just make a comment, notwithstanding whatever the determination of the panel is, that it's clear this particular application has had a bit of a path through council system and there's been amendments on the way, that I'd strongly recommend that with future applications of particularly this sort of scale and type, that the applicant consider doing a pre-lodgement discussion with council, which I note there wasn't one in this particular case, because I think that can help identify issues early on in the piece and really helps the process all the way through the process and potentially avoids some loops where there has to be there is amendments to the application as it's going through the assessment process, because those issues have been identified up front. So I just sort of believe that as a general comment I tend to make when there hasn't been a pre-lodgement. So I think that they're extremely valuable in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. Thank you. And myself and Stephen Finlay had a very similar conversation. So yeah, we take that on board certainly.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. So that's the end of this item. So as I mentioned, what will happen at the end of the public component of the meeting, the panel will then retire, have a meeting in camera where we will work our way through the council officer's assessment, what we've heard today, and of course our own independent views on the application, and we'll make a determination which will then be made available publicly probably sometime next week, depending on how rapidly council is able to process it. So can I thank you all for your time and for being so articulate as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair,
So,
can I ask one question, please,
sure,
of Adam Wheat? Thanks for bringing to our attention that there's a CDC that you've done on your property. I just wanted to clarify from you, has that been approved? And
Yes.
So
Yes.
It has. Okay.
Yeah, we've obviously paused any intention to build pending the outcome of this, but yeah, it's approved with council.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Once again, thank you, everyone. And the panel will now move on to item 4.2, which is on page 104 of our agenda paper. That relates to DA 2023/1290 40, I've almost said McCormack, 40 Cormac Street, Deacon Hill, with alterations and additions to a dwelling house. I will note that the reason why this has been referred to the panel is because the landowner is a member of council staff who's principally involved in the exercise of council's functions under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. So for transparency and probity reasons, this application, like any other of this form, has been referred to the panel for determination. We don't have any objectors that I'm registered, nor the applicant registered to make a presentation. Is that still the case, Heidi?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. So that being the case, I'll close item 4.2, and they are the only two items for the public component of this meeting. So I'll now close the public component of the meeting, and thank you all for attending the meeting. Thank you.